Thank you so much for watching Landumc Goes There. Please subscribe and hit the like button and the bell notification button. The Longest Day is a 1962 epic war film that was shot in black and white and based on Cornelius Ryan's 1959 nonfiction book by the same name. That's about the D-Day landings at Normandy on June 6, 1944. The film has a large, unbelievable cast. People like John Wayne, Kenneth More, Richard Todd, Robert Mitchum, Richard Burton, Sean Connery, Henry Fonda, Red Buttons, Peter Lawford, Eddie Albert, and the list just keeps going and going and going. Many of these actors just played basically cameo appearances in the film. Producer Darryl Zanuck paid the writer $175,000 for the film rights to the book. He then brought Ryan in to write the script, but he had conflicts with Zanuck as soon as the two met. They had to get somebody to act as a mediator between the two. That person would deliver Ryan's script pages to Zanuck, then return them with his notes on them. They wouldn't even talk to each other. The film was shot at several French locations and at some French sound stages. It's said that during the filming of the landings at Omaha Beach, the extras that were appearing as American soldiers didn't want to jump off the landing craft into the water because they thought it might be too cold. Robert Mitchum, who played General Coda, became disgusted with him, and he went ahead and jumped in first, at which point they all ended up following his example. The Rupert paradummies that are used in the movie were far more elaborate and lifelike than those that were actually used in the decoy parachute drop, which was called Operation Atlantic. The real ones were simply canvas or burlap sacks filled with sand. While they were clearing a section of the Normandy beach for shooting, the crew ended up unearthing a tank that had been buried in the sand there since the original invasion. Mechanics for the production cleaned it off, fixed it up, and it was used in the movie as part of the British tank regiment. During pre-production, there were discussions about having former President Dwight D. Eisenhower play himself in the film, and he actually indicated his willingness to participate in it. But they finally decided that the makeup artist couldn't make him appear young enough to play his World War II era self. So the role went to Henry Grace. He was a set decorator who had been in the film industry since the mid-1930s. He had no acting experience at all, but Grace was a dead ringer for the young Eisenhower, though his voice did differ quite a bit, so they had someone else dub his lines. Just before they began shooting in Corsica, producer Darryl Zanuck was approached by a man stating that he represented the beach owners in that area. He insisted on a $15,000 payment. Zanuck decided to pay the money, but he later discovered that it was a scam, that there were no private beaches in that area. This movie is one of the first World War II movies made by an American studio in which the members of each country spoke nearly all their dialogue in the language of that country. There were subtitles on the bottom of the screen to translate the various languages. While in Italy doing the filming of Cleopatra, Roddy McDowall became so frustrated with the numerous delays during its production that he begged Darryl Zanuck for a part in this movie, just so he could do some work. He ended up with a small role as an American soldier. Richard Burton, who was also filming Cleopatra, took the opportunity caused by the long delays to make a real short cameo as a RAF pilot. The studio was taking a huge gamble making this movie. because it had a $10 million budget, and it was considered a very daring venture at the time. Fortunately, this movie turned out to be one of Fox's biggest hits. When they were shooting the scene in the French countryside where the paratroopers drop, the town that they shot it in was completely taken over by the production. Traffic was stopped, stores were closed, the power was shut off in order not to endanger the paratroopers, who were unused to doing night drops in populated areas. Still, the lights and the staged fire proved to be difficult to work around, and only one or two of the jumpers managed to land in the square, with several suffering minor injuries. One of the initial jumpers broke both his legs on landing. Ultimately, plans to use authentic jumpers was abandoned, and they opted instead for rigging jumps from high cranes. As a part of John Wayne's contract, in addition to his high fee that he was paid, he insisted on getting separate billing. The usual practice in movie credits for this type of situation is to start off with starring John Wayne and then the other actors. However, the credits begin with starring the other actors and John Wayne. Wayne's name appears last on the credits, while still meeting the separate billing clause of his contract. I think Fox was really trying to teach him a lesson, because nobody else in this movie made a whole lot of money at it. The crickets that are demonstrated by John Wayne and those used during the actual invasion were made by a company called J. Hudson and Company, a whistle manufacturer in Birmingham, England. That company is still in existence today, and it produces an exact replica of the crickets using the original tooling from that time. Now, in the film, you're going to see a credit and see an actress named Arletty. She's a French actress that was pretty popular. She began in films in the 1930s and had a lot of similarities to Greta Garbo. She was self-educated and a true woman of taste. She lived her personal life on her own terms, and that got her in trouble. During the war, she ended up having an affair with a German officer, and she was tried for treason. People hated her after the war was over. She was arrested and did prison time for it. But upon her arrest, there were some crazy rumors that ran through Paris, and nobody really knows whether they're true or not. But it was said that she had her head shaved and was paraded through the streets, being tarred and feathered. One reason that this is thought to be true is that the hairdresser that she used was asked by the actress, who came in with her head in a turban, wanting him to make her a wig. I don't know what the truth to this story is, but it's an interesting one. Take a look back at this epic. It's a long one, but it's a good one to watch. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll continue to chase the classics.